What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, December 2nd, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now it is 10:31 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Eastern Europe and from the Middle East. NATO conducted a first ever B-52 simulated bombing drop in Finland. This is being reported by the U.S. Air Force in Europe and Air Forces Africa. You can see this official press release here dated November 26th. Two U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress bombers assigned to the 20th Expeditionary Bomb Squadron conducted a simulated weapons drop training mission as part of Bomber Task Force 25-1 in Finland on November 25th. During the mission, bombers integrated with Finnish F-18 Hornets and Swedish Air Force Gripens. The mission showcased Finland's growing role within the NATO alliance and marked another milestone in strengthening NATO's collective defense. The event also enabled U.S. forces to learn from their Finnish counterparts following austere landing demonstrations in September and participation in the Ramstein Air Base 1v1 air superiority exercise held in July. This Bomber Task Force mission exemplifies our unwavering commitment to our European allies and partners. Together, we build stronger, more strategic relationships that reinforce security and stability across the region, said General James Hecker, commander of U.S. Air Forces in Europe, Air Forces Africa. So this is huge news, guys. Okay, the U.S. training with Finnish F-18s and Swedish Gripens on a nuclear bombing mission. Okay, so they were practicing literally doing bombing runs, okay? Now, one thing to keep in mind with the B-52s is that they are not used anymore for gravity bombs because they're not stealthy. So the B-52 would never be used to, let's say, fly over Russian airspace and drop nuclear bombs right on top of Russia from Russian airspace because they would get shot down by Russian air defenses. That's what the B-2 stealth bombers are for. However, the B-52 does carry the AGM-86 air-launched cruise missiles, and each B-52 can carry 20 AGM-86 air-launched cruise missiles, which have a range of over 1,000 miles. You can think of them as like an air-launched Tomahawk missile, and they can carry the W-80 thermonuclear warhead, which has a blast yield of up to 150 kilotons, okay, which is over 5 times as powerful as the Hiroshima bomb. So each B-52 can carry 20 of those. So basically, these B-52s up in northern Scandinavia, what they would do is they would probably attack targets in northern Russia, specifically in the Kola Peninsula. Russia has 2/3 of their nuclear-armed submarines. They have a lot of important naval bases there as part of their northern fleet. They also have a lot of important bomber bases and other military facilities there in the Kola Peninsula, so likely the B-52s would be used to strike those targets over there. And they would need to be escorted by fighter jets because as soon as they take to the skies, Russian radars would pick them up because they're so large they would be easily distinguishable from fighter jets or other military planes, and Russia would immediately try to shoot them down with any means possible, knowing that they can launch these missiles. So this is clearly a sign that NATO is preparing for war with Russia, possibly nuclear war, to strike Russia's northern fleet from inside of Finnish territory or inside of Scandinavia, escorted by Scandinavian fighter jets. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of very concerning things happening in NATO. We had the news come out that Germany has an operations plan for war with Russia that involves moving 1 million troops into Eastern Europe. We know that Sweden and other Scandinavian countries have started handing out World War III survival manuals. And on one of the live streams, we looked at the Swedish survival manual sent out by the Swedish Civil Defense Agency, and 28 out of 32 pages in that manual were all about surviving war, invasion, and nuclear attacks, nuclear bombing, how to survive fallout and bombing, air raids, things like that, okay? So NATO is clearly preparing for a showdown with Russia, potentially a nuclear exchange. And in addition to that, Poland is building the largest defense line in Europe since World War II. They're spending the equivalent of over $2.5 billion on this massive defense line along their borders with Russia and Belarus. That's going to involve minefields, anti-tank obstacles, fighting positions, bunkers, observation posts, and all kinds of stuff, okay? The Baltic countries are building hundreds and hundreds of bunkers along their border with Russia. And so NATO is scrambling to prepare for this war. And we also know that German Chancellor Olaf Scholz arrived in Ukraine today for talks with Zelensky for the first time in 2.5 years. So this is pretty serious for Olaf Scholz to travel there since the beginning of the war. Okay, maybe they're going to finally agree to give Ukraine the Taurus missiles now that the U.S. and the U.K. have given Ukraine the ATACMS and Storm Shadows. I don't know, but this is very, very concerning. And apparently, Western soldiers and private military companies are going to be sent to Ukraine. And this was reported by the French press. Apparently, the main role is going to be played by France, the UK, and Poland. Apparently, discussions on the topic are remaining secret. Okay, so NATO is discussing sending secret soldiers into Ukraine and private military companies. Very concerning. And the UN Security Council is going to be holding an emergency meeting today on the situation in Syria. There is a civil war going on in Syria right now. U.S.-backed rebels are in the process of overthrowing the Assad regime. And we're hearing that there were intense U.S. airstrikes along the Iraqi-Syrian border last night that targeted Iranian-backed mercenaries that tried to cross into Syria to support the Assad regime forces against the rebels. So the U.S. is now actively protecting the Syrian rebels. We've already seen Russia striking the Syrian rebels. On Saturday, they launched a bunch of bombing runs with their fighter jets. And now the U.S. is supporting the rebels and striking the Assad forces, okay? We know that Russia has a very large air base and naval base in Syria that's now going to be threatened, okay? The rebels have already taken over Aleppo, and they're continuing to gain strength, so it's not looking too good for Assad or Russia. And over 50 Iranian-backed militants were killed in this U.S. strike, and at least a dozen military trucks were destroyed yesterday in the Deir ez-Zor governorate of eastern Syria after a convoy entering from Iraq was targeted by several A-10 Warthog close air support attack aircraft of the U.S. Air Force. In addition, several Iranian sites near the town of Al-Mayadeen were targeted by coalition aircraft, resulting in the destruction of a command center and barracks. And Syrian rebels have captured a Russian Pantsir air defense system in Aleppo. And Yemen's armed forces, aka the Houthis, have announced that they launched missiles at Tel Aviv over the weekend. Apparently, they launched the Palestine 2 hypersonic ballistic missile, which was shot down by Israel's air defense systems. And the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., said on Monday that the reported presence of a Russian submarine in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea was very worrisome. The Philippine Daily Inquirer newspaper reported on Monday that a Russian attack sub surfaced inside Manila's exclusive economic zone last week, citing security sources. This is very concerning. Any intrusion into the West Philippine Sea of our exclusive economic zone of our baselines is very worrisome, Marcos told reporters. And the highly pathogenic avian influenza strain has now been detected at a poultry farm in New Zealand's South Island. Authorities said this is the first time the island nation has reported a highly pathogenic variant of avian influenza. Tests showed a rural chicken farm in the Otago region identified the H7N6 subtype. So this is very, very serious, guys. We also have H5N1 breaking out all across North America. And what you're looking at here are two Russian VIP planes and doomsday planes going to Minsk, the capital of Belarus, from Moscow. This could potentially be Putin on one of these planes going to Belarus. We'll have to wait and see if any press comes out later today that Putin went to Belarus. This is extremely unusual to see these two Russian doomsday planes going to Minsk. Something serious is about to go down, okay, for these two to be going to Belarus. And we also had a lot of reconnaissance in South Korea. Here we have a South Korean Air Force reconnaissance plane, and then here we have a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance plane. And late last night, we heard a lot of nuclear attack options being broadcasted from about midnight Eastern Time until about 0400 Eastern Time. There were over 25 emergency action messages broadcasted, which is extremely unusual for that short of a period of time. So our nuclear forces are on very high alert. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later on tonight with another update. I'm also going to be in the live stream later on tonight. I do have the 24/7 live stream ongoing right now. So go and check it out. There's a lot of people in the chat there that you can share information with. And I monitor the news throughout the day and update the chat. And I also have my radio hooked into the stream so you can hear the nuclear forces messages as they come in. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. Until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.